seconds of radio.
All right, welcome back. Episode 32 with Garnett Strother. He's part two. Did I fuck that up already?
No, you put some stank on that
Yeah,
shit, bro.
Strother.
We went uptown with that one.
We're super excited to have Garnett back. This is part two with Garnett, and we had a lot of great things to talk about when he was here the first time. And we're going to do, let me turn this up. I have all these technical malfunctions. But yeah, welcome back, man. Thank you so much for coming back. This is awesome.
It's good to be back.
Yeah.
I thank you guys for inviting me. I really appreciate what you guys do. You have my homeboy back on. You have my man. He's a physical therapist that I work with at out of train station. He has a very similar style to what I do, and we had Erwin.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Erwin's my
Yes.
man, yo.
It's
Like,
good dude.
So
man.
wait, you know Earl? I didn't know that. Did you?
Yeah,
know that?
yeah.
I didn't know that.
Oh,
No.
Yeah, Miss Small World. You know,
that
Yeah,
is
small
hilarious.
world.
you know the cool guy trainer slash whatever slash.
He doesn't want to be a physical
homeopathic.
therapist. Yeah.
No. He's because it's hard for us to put ourselves in a box when there's so many more things that we value.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we've had conversations ourselves that
Right.
were very similar to what we talked about.
Yes.
Very similar to he's on the personal development side. He's on the personal development path as well for what he does and how he heals people. And I have a really deep respect for that.
Yes.
Because it's there's so much garbage, I think, perceptually out in the internet. Because if you have a following, you can kind of say whatever the fuck you want to say, and people, just believe.
Kind of listen.
You gotta listen because we're all lost, right? But when someone really puts in the work, like Erwin has, and is constantly discovering things about himself, you get a sense of real connectivity to who he is,
Mm-hmm.
and that's important. It's more than authentic. It's like you can be authentic and not be approachable. You know what I'm saying?
True. Yeah.
Like I love David Goggins. I don't know if I want to hang out with David
Is that
Goggins.
right? It's funny. It's funny you say
Super.
that. Yeah, I was thinking about Mr. Goggins and his approach. But one of the things that stick with me is the most important conversation you have is with yourself.
That's right.
And that kind of rang true with a lot of our conversations.
Right.
But yeah, definitely on the extreme end of things.
Yeah. I mean, but that's only his public persona.
Right.
Maybe he's a really chill dude after he does his 1,000 sit-ups and 1,000 chin-ups
And a 100-mile run.
and a 100-mile run. I imagine he's pretty relaxed
Oh,
Yeah.
I hope so.
after that. Yeah.
But Erwin, after I never met Erwin prior to the podcast. I think Lee has, but he definitely has that self-disclosure about his development, and during the podcast, and I think in person as well, that this is my journey. I'm learning as I go. This is what I found that's helpful,
Right.
and truly to the core is trying to help people.
He is.
By his, and also drawing his line in the sand in terms of what he accepts and doesn't accept, which is good.
Yes. He has some polarizing views about his industry, and we're kind of on the same path. We've been doing. I think he's been doing it for over like a decade. I'm pretty sure he's been doing it for about the same amount of time, and you're about the same age, and we're from a different generation. We're in that we're that last end of millennials.
Yes.
Right. So we didn't grow up seeing our parents destroy their lives like we're gonna destroy our lives with technology.
Right. This is true.
Like just having constant access. So like my daughter is gonna see me and be like, yo, this shit is whack. I'm gonna, maybe I don't make as much money, but at least I have my sanity.
Yes.
And a lot of experts are predicting that that's where society is headed towards. It's headed towards less money as motivation and more of what we're talking about.
Meaning.
More meaning and purpose in pursuit of that. And so I think me and Erwin and I are a little ahead of the game when it comes to applying personal development with training in a serious way.
Absolutely. And he, yeah, I mean, what he's to someone that's not in his generation or someone that's been in physical therapy for a little while, it may seem radical.
Right.
Right. Everything from the cost to just like renaming himself. Not renaming himself. He's not renaming what he does and not being associated with the old kind of model, which is crumbling. But that a lot of the people that've been in the game for a while will take a look at it and it's like, wow, this kid is crazy. And 5 years later, not so crazy.
Not so crazy anymore.
And that's and it's he's we chat about this on the podcast at length, but the new generation of physical therapists and even trainers are much more eclectic and much more open. They have to be much more open-minded, much more have more of an entrepreneurial spirit, understand the hierarchy, whether it's fitness or fitness or physical therapy. That hierarchy is kind of bullshit.
It is bullshit. I really don't like hierarchies.
Yeah, same here.
In most things. It's funny that we are involved in a hierarchy, a belt system in jiu-jitsu. However, hierarchies kind of suck. And it's complete bullshit. But there is one. I realize that as I'm in a gym, and that's how I know Erwin is from the gym that I'm talking about, is that the hierarchy within the gym structure is who can lift the heavier weight still. And I'm like, they still make you guys? Like, what the fuck what are you talking about here? However, the way someone looks and the way someone behaves warrants respect in a specific criteria, right? Because he comes over to jiu-jitsu land,
it doesn't matter.
That meme, exactly, from Lord of the Rings, like, you have no power.
It's so... Yeah,
you know what I'm saying? Like, oh, you got muscles, great. You're gonna have a great time in the ice bath later on tonight. So, but you take me to the squat rack, and I'm not too far away from where these guys are as well. So I like to remain curious, too, because there is validity in what they do. It's just, is it part of your criteria? Right. So is it something that your clients actually need, as opposed to a doctrine that you have adopted because it became part of your identity at one point, and you kind of continued that path because you as you progress, you become, like, it sucks being a hierarchy when you first get in there, but over time you get your blue belt. Your boy Eric. What's really good? Get your blue belt. You get invited to the big boy class.
Oh yeah, and that comes with a whole different levels of sharks.
Right. So now it's like you're not dealing with bankers anymore. You're dealing with, like, some murderers out there that just like, I'm in it to win it, and today you're food.
Yes, fresh meat.
Fresh meat. Yeah. So it's all good. But like, again, the hierarchy is like, because the white belts, it don't matter what stripe you are.
No,
it doesn't matter. You're a white belt. You're a white belt with a white belt with a white ass stripe. Get out of my face.
No, man. I feel like people come at you at a whole different level in the white. I mean, they come at you in the other class, but the white belt class, I don't know. That was, for my personal journey, a little more proving of my own self. Like, oh shit, they're watching. The teachers watch. Whereas now it's like, no one's really watching.
Right.
The person is watching that's in front of me. He's watching me. Nobody else is. But it's definitely a different speed. But the hierarchy, I agree. Everybody in that room, whether you're a blue belt, black belt, they treat, they're there to work.
Right, exactly. And I like that mentality. That's what I came up out of. And I think that you got to acclimate to whatever environment that you're in, Like when I got my eardrum burst, the guy that burst my eardrum sparring with Muay Thai is a pro fighter. But he had, he kind of had a little time off. It was like right after, like maybe a few weeks after, like New Year's. It was like middle of like February, and he knew that he burst my ear. He knew something was wrong because he overreacted a little bit.
Gotcha.
We would just touch, and all of a sudden, and then check left hook, and then just pop. And he looked at me like, "Are you okay?" And I was like, "Yeah." But then I was like, okay, my hearing is not returning. Usually it's like, and it comes back, but it just stayed out there.
Wow.
So then I went to the hospital, and they were like, yo, your eardrum is like 30% destroyed, and you might need surgery.
Oof. Where'd you go? Mind me asking?
I went to urgent care.
Right. What away.
So they could see me.
And how do they diagnose? This is all news to me.
They just look in your ear, and be like, yo, bro.
Otoscope.
Otoscope. There you go. I didn't know the technical term from that. Yeah.
So yeah, man, it was like your perception of what's happening sometimes isn't what's really happening. So you really have to dial into the environment and how the person in front of you is responding to stimulus. Not your interpretation of it. Like what's really going on, what's their breathing like, what's their movement like, what's their attitude like. You know, I usually, before sparring, I usually talk to everybody to see where their head is at. How you feeling?
Yeah, that's smart.
How you feeling today?
Little screen.
Yeah, you know, like, what's up today? I'm just tired. That means his movements are not going to be sharp. That means he's going to work extra hard, usually. And it's going to be, you know, what it is. That's how I know that the guy, I can put that under the right context when I got my ear burst, because I could have interpreted that as this guy being an asshole. What the fuck, right?
Yeah.
But I was like, okay, this guy, under the context that this is his first time sparring back in a few weeks. This guy he just opened up a gym. He just told me he's been busy with other things, you know.
He's not there.
So he was trying his best to be present, but it was his first time back. So am I gonna be mad at the guy? No, like it's shit like that happens. But at the same time, you just got to be mindful of what you're dealing with. This guy he does have over like 100 fights, and you know this is how he acclimates. How he acclimates ain't the same way you acclimate.
No, definitely not.
That's what it is. What have you guys been working on?
Well, we're here. We're here growing my practice. You know, I recently took on a full-time space where I was renting part-time space. So that's a big jump.
Awesome, man. Congratulations.
Thank you. It's been a cool ride. You know, I mean, a little apprehension before getting involved in it, but I slept on it. And all the signs were like, you need to make this move. You know, it's a win-win.
Right.
As you know, I got my blue belt, so I was putting in some work.
You were putting in work heavy, man.
I was putting in 3-4 days and
grinding
out. You know, it's the most challenging thing I've done in my life is definitely jiu-jitsu.
Yeah.
Physically, emotionally, and it really has shown me how to kind of just let go a little. I mean, I'm a tense, high energy kind of guy, and in that situation, it didn't work out so well. So I had to work on my breathing. Thanks to you,
thanks
to every
that text meant the world to me.
Yeah, I mean, no, it was
so
real.
much,
you know,
man.
I reached out to him that he was one of the instrumental characters that put me through a fire in a good way, and just kept on. And now you go against certain individuals that don't have the same clarity that you have, and it's like,
man,
that's easier. That's a little easier. But between jiu-jitsu, business, and most importantly, watching my little man grow.
Yeah.
My little man is thriving, so that's
he's like
where
a year and a half now, right?
He's 2.
He's 2? Wow.
In 3 months.
Okay.
So the little man, I mean, every day is a journey. Every day is a new day with him. But thankfully, all is well.
Sweet, man. That sounds great. What's going on with you, bro?
Yeah, same thing. I'm building my practice.
Not exactly.
Lee and I are twins.
We're not twins. Yeah. What's going on, baby?
I have, let's see, I don't know if you know, I have a practice and then I work part-time at another clinic. So I'm still doing that. I'm definitely growing with practice. I'm with my fiance in the practice. She's an acupuncturist.
Oh, wow. Tag team.
So, yeah, so we're working with that. We're definitely growing. We got past our first year. We were super happy with that, and we survived tax season, which was good.
Santa Maria.
It was a close one.
De Jesus Cristo.
Yeah.
Dude.
It was bad.
Yeah, that's a rough one. I mean, I have someone looking at my books and shit now, but it makes my life a lot easier. Audrey is a saint.
Oh, nice.
I'm never letting Audrey go. Audrey, I love you. I like every podcast, I confess my love to Audrey. She's just phenomenal.
She's very responsive.
Right?
I've dealt with her to get you on the show, and very efficient.
Yes. Yeah, she knows what time it is. You know, she's at practice, and she's just a phenomenal person. She's also a mom too. You know, so she knows what time it is. She's a very caring person, in general, overall. You know, but I'm glad to hear everybody's doing well.
Yeah. What's the deal with you? I mean, aside from the eardrum bursting, that's not
a footnote.
Yeah.
It was so for me, I'm looking to give back to children. I want to work with my homeboy Professor Ed. He has his wife has a school in I think it was not Bed-Stuy, not no nearly as it's a it's a little gentrified, little gentrified area. Where is it? It's in
Park Slope.
No, not that quite that gentrified.
Park Carroll
where is
Gardens.
It was in
Can't be Williamsburg.
no.
Is it in Brooklyn?
It's in Brooklyn, but it's located out there in Brooklyn somewhere, and she specifies in working with kids that were like me, that had issues, that were like, it's either the streets or I don't know what, and I want to teach martial arts to those kids this summer. So
That's
Very
awesome.
cool.
I'm looking
Is it
forward to that.
Greenpoint? No.
It's around, starts with a B.
No, Bensonhurst.
Bushwick.
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 Okay. The
Bushwick
semi,
gets
like you
weird.
just said, a little gentrified.
Little
People,
bit. It's
just kinda
popping,
little.
but it's not like safe.
It's right on the side.
Mhm.
Right.
It's not like
when the lights go out, things change.
Yeah, it's like why is this block this completely not lit? Like why is what's going on over here, bro? So it's out there, and it's specifically like I want to work with kids that were like me. So I can't wait to do that. My daughter's taking the SATs tomorrow.
Whoa.
That's
awesome.
And she's like they have like an app on your phone now. You can just like prep for that with the app.
Wow. Jeez,
You
I had
can
to take the
Study.
classes.
Did she take any review? Well, I'm sure.
We'll see how she does. This is the test run. This is the full actual one, but
She'll get
we'll see
another
how she
shot.
does. Hopefully her mom's genetics kind of like kick in. You know what I'm saying? Her mom was a beast. Her mom got to 98 percentile on her SATs
Oh my god.
when she took them. Yeah, like no big deal. Like didn't study.
Oh, I hated those.
Yeah, like what the hell, bro? Anyway, hopefully that part, it'll just like, I don't know, some embedded DNA will emerge under pressure. It'll just snap right into it. But she's fine on her own, though. I'm not even worried about the writing part. She's been reading and writing at a collegiate level since sixth grade, probably.
Wow.
She's a beast. She has no idea how powerful she is. I try to tell her, but she's like, nah, Dad, I don't know. She's like, now she's starting to kind of believe it a little bit, and I'm like, oh, shit.
Well, that's what it takes, man.
Yeah.
I don't think none of us really. I just go back to Goggins' 40% principle that we operate at 40%. I don't know how true, but I could see it play out.
I think he's like, yeah, I can see that. I think he's placating to more of a population of people that are a little more sedentary than we are.
Exactly.
Yeah. I think we're on the upper end.
Yes.
Because if that was the case, we wouldn't be needing to have this conversation.
Correct.
Like this is pushing the envelope in the direction that we want to move in, not maintaining the status quo. We have no interest in this.
Not at all.
No interest in maintaining the status quo. I'm constantly pushing the limits of myself and my clients of what we're capable of doing and accomplishing, because you got like 80% of a century, and then your body is crap. And then what else are you going to do? Your mind starts going, and that's it. And, I think we're all more focused on how to have better quality of life and pushing the boundaries for us and the next generation.
Absolutely. I mean, you just said next generation being my son.
Right.
I mean, my wife and I had this little talk the other day. It's like break whatever cycles did exist in her family, my family, let it die with us. You know, I mean, and as you know, having a daughter, everything is just fixated on them in a good way. It's just that the purpose that we talk about is like, I got to give this kid the best life and just show him the way.
That's it.
Whatever that means. I'm still figuring that out, but
that's the thing, right? Like we don't really like.
I don't know what it means. I don't know completely, but I know I'm working towards it.
Yeah, man. They reflect everything. You got to really do some fucking work.
Oh yeah.
You really got to work on yourself if you're a parent, because if you're paying attention, the negative things, all the things that you have been neglecting about yourself come up in your kid. Everything.
Yes.
The positive things too.
All right.
But you're not in charge of what they absorb.
No.
So you got to really work on your shit. You got to really work on yourself and be in a place where you can't really have an ego about how well you're doing right at the moment, because you're doing the best you can if you're not observing yourself from that place. So that's what I'm working with my clients on doing now, is to do that without them knowing about it, of course.
Does you have
Wink, wink.
Yeah.
Of course, they don't know that I'm doing
you have
it.
a secret research going on every client.
I
I
have-
remember that last one.
Right. I had man, they don't listen to me. No, I had a meeting today with a client who just came back from vacation to find herself. I had to go find myself. She had to eat, pray, love it real quick, and come back. And then she comes back, and there she is again. So
she didn't find it?
She found a lot of things.
Oh.
I don't think her criteria leaving was not the same upon her return, which was the goal. However, it's about really changing your habits and being aware of your behaviors, and that takes some work. You're not gonna just go somewhere and relocate every time you need to reset something. That's not really a realistic way of doing things, And I hope the goal is to help her find that. The goal is to help all my clients and myself find that within ourselves, those inner resources, which is the theme for my week on Instagram, is finding those inner resources all the time whenever you need them. Because every single developmental challenge that you've ever faced in your life, you had the resources within you the whole time.
Right.
That's what all these movies and
Right.
television is all about. It's trying to remind you. It sounds corny, but it's not really, because we forget how dope we are. Another Gogginsism.
Yeah.
We forget how fucking hard we are, as he would say.
Right.
We just like, I'm going through this issue, and then Goggins has a great way of becoming meta about himself and observing himself, because when you have a strong internal frame of reference, it's hard to get out of your own head.
Correct. Yes.
Like you said, when you were in the BJJ room and you were in the white belt room, and it was like, oh, no one's watching. This guy's watching.
Yeah.
That was the motivation to
like,
okay, I gotta work.
Right.
Now, when no one's watching you, who are you really?
Right.
What kind of work ethic do I really have when I'm the only source of anything, of motivation?
Right.
So, I think that's interesting. I think understanding that about yourself is the most powerful thing you can do, and that's what I really want to teach. She came back and she wanted me to be her babysitter, basically, hold her accountable by having to see me every day.
Got it. Yeah.
But that's not a real useful tool, is it?
No, because when you're not around, she's
just gonna go back to her. She's gonna find a reason.
Yeah.
She's gonna find a reason to go back to her old habits, because why not? Because then I become an outside resource, and that's not how you promote and create change in yourself. You have to find internal resources, because then they're always with you. If I had to borrow money every time I needed something, I'd always be in debt.
Right.
But if I found a way to generate money, then I'd always have resources. And you got to think of what you give and what you take from yourself and how you contribute to things, and to people as a debt to yourself, and to hold yourself accountable, So I think that, that's the best way of going about things, because that's true empowerment,
When you talk about resetting, I know Lee and I chat about, how jiu-jitsu is a big reset, right? Working out, reset. Running, to some, reset. Meditation, reset.
Right.
How do you convey this to someone that's not well-versed in, I think we're all in this room are attempting to master ourselves, right?
Right.
But how do we convey that to someone that they might think they have themselves wrapped up, as a lot of our clients.
Oh, yeah.
How do you convey that reset? How do you switch it and say, hey, I'm curious to see some of your methods and getting that out of people?
Well, I did it with you guys just now.
Right, yeah.
So I think that being curious about their framework, if I was teaching it to someone, I'd first have to understand where they're at. So with my client, what I did was I spoke to her and asked her how her trip was. She told me her criteria of highlights. She used a method to describe it called activity. She just, we went there, then we went this, then we did that, then we did this, then we did that. Everyone describes their reality differently. Hers criteria is movement.
Activity, right.
Even as she's describing it, she's thinking about when are we going to start this session, because I want to get moving, because I equate that with progress. Even though I have to have this conversation so I can determine what she values, so I can give it to her. I can't know what to give you if we don't have a conversation about it first.
Right.
Right? So talking about it is very low on her criteria, even though it's completely necessary. So that's how you begin. Then you have to establish rapport with the person in order to be able to influence them to do what they need to do. So the way I establish rapport is, well, there's no set, process really. It depends on the person. But what I do is I listen. I listen intently to what they have to say about themselves. They have to say, usually they describe their reality in many different ways. We talked a little bit about like VKA, visual,
Yes.
kinesthetic, and auditory.
Yes.
Right, last time.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm in the master program right now,
Right.
and it's we got a lot to talk about, bro. So the levels in which people communicate go deeper than what they experience.
Right.
So as she describes her experience, I'm getting to know what her value system is. Once you understand someone's value system, then you can give them what they want. So I would listen for that, and then the NLP training and the hypnosis training and the stuff like that I've been doing helps me identify those things a lot better, and that's what gives me rapport with people, because I can really truly listen to what they're saying, and then convey that to them, and then give them what they want. So if you're trying to motivate someone, you first have to see things their way. How is their reality shaped?
Right.
You know, we go into conversations and we're like, oh wow, this person's gonna do this, and this. Usually,
Right.
she came into conversations that he's gonna try to make me lose weight. He's gonna try and make me. Never mentioned weight to her.
Right.
She mentioned it because she was anticipating me,
Right.
doing it, and I'm just like, okay. But every time she brought up the weight, she kind of glanced over it because she didn't have a positive association to it. So me, naturally, I'm trying to move her in that direction so we can like undress some things, but she just completely resisted me the whole time. So I said, okay, well, I just want to point out that you brought up this issue, and I'm just saying that I hear you, and when you're ready to revisit that issue, we can take it on together. And if you're saying that this particular way to motivate you works best, then we'll work on that. Thank you for telling me that.
All right. That's it.
That's it. Acknowledge them. You got to acknowledge the people that you're talking to. It's specifically in the way that they're communicating. Otherwise, they feel like they haven't been heard. You know.
This we see play out in our both in fitness and in physical therapy or rehab, we want to call it, where you have a clinician or a fitness instructor, trainer, whatever you want to label it, but are so wrapped up in their own stuff that they're not even present in the conversation. And I mean, you see it probably on a daily basis. Where,
definitely.
I mean, we were lucky enough to have a couple of great mentors, and we were all about listen before you speak, and they should be speaking more than you. You shouldn't be telling them what's going on.
That's right.
And
80-20 on that one. For sure.
And usually people tell you what they need, very clearly.
Right.
Sometimes they don't know what they need, but you tease it out if you're well versed in developing rapport.
That's right.
But that's a huge skill, I think, now in the physical therapy world, that they're just starting to focus on with new grads, which is crazy. It's this interviewing skill to actually extract information. Before, like what we learned in school was like there was a checklist that we needed to go through, and we had to get to the end of the checklist.
Is it radiating?
And so we had to like.
Is there night pain?
Yeah.
Right.
Are you taking any medications? Okay.
Right.
Any health conditions? No. So it's real checklist.
It is, and I got a lot of criticism when I was in the hospital because I would let the people talk. And my instructor was like, why don't you interrupt them? Because we only have this amount of time. I'm just like, because they're telling me what's going on.
Right.
And that was like a huge back and forth. But we came from a training background before PT school. And so I understood a little bit, not scientifically, but more like we get more success when I allow to have a conversation and actually find out what's going on. But yeah, I feel like that's such a huge thing now, and it should be way more emphasized.
I think that it's a huge thing because that's what we're looking for.
Yes,
right?
we're dialed in.
We're
we're teasing out all the
right. We're taking the cherry off the top and like eating that first, and that's kind of how brains work.
Yes.
How can we get that through our clients? You have to know techniques that do that. You have to study communication. You have to study how the brain works to develop that criteria. First of all, you have to have that criteria in yourself. You're looking for how to connect with your clients. It's very specific, right? If you value that over everything else, then you're able to have access to their performance and influence their performance in a profound way. That's the only way, because not a lot of people are gonna just come in the gate and trust you.
No.
They're just not.
Not in this town.
Not in this town. Not in New York.
No,
I think I'm speaking from the New York perspective mostly.
Yeah, for sure.
Because it's the hardest place to really influence people. Other places, personal training and physical therapists, maybe not so much. People probably go there.
Right.
Depending on how wealthy you are. But in LA and Miami, people go to them.
Yes.
The rich people are so out of touch. They have everyone kind of come to them.
Correct. Yeah.
And it's really hard to build rapport and to change and shift someone's perspective in their own home.
Yes.
When they have all these associations to everything around you. Everything, let's chunk down, shall we? Let's chunk down to association. Now, someone that's trying to commit to stop smoking, right? They have a very specific association to that behavior. Association is how we introduce meaning to everything. All of our experiences. If I came over there and I slapped you on the shoulder, you'd either interpret that as, oh, he's just being playful and fun, or like, yo, what the fuck? Depending on context, right? But it's about the association, the experience. The reality of it is a completely different situation, completely different criteria. But the interpretation and the association of that interpretation is everything. So in order to change the behavior, you got to change the association. There's techniques where people, you ever heard that, like your mom, wash your mouth out with soap when you start cursing. Now you associate that soap with cursing. That's why that shit works. Mom was
a little
right.
smack.
Or a smack. Oh, you want to pop? Now, cursing equals smacking.
Not going to do that.
Not going to do that shit. So, like behavioral psychologists, Tony Robbins and people like that, they would have a guy, oh, you like smoking cigarettes? Oh, yeah, here's a whole pack. No, you're going to stay here till you smoke the whole pack in front of me. Smoke faster, smoke, that type of thing. So now you associate that. But the problem is, not the problem, but the reality, most times they go back to smoking.
It's temporary.
It's a temporary thing because their association hasn't changed permanently. You ever know a guy who quit smoking for 5 years and then just goes right back? Right? We all know that guy.
Many of them.
Yeah, because they read some research where smoking's not so bad.
Yeah, something like my uncle's 80 and he smokes every day.
Right. George Burns lived like 92.
Oh my God!
It's the most extreme example possible to support their reality. But yeah, here we are. Like that's their association to that. But let's dig a little deeper into the behavior. Where's that behavior coming from? Some people smoke cigarettes because they're a rebel. You can't fucking tell me what to do. I'm fucking smoking a cigarette. Fuck
rebel.
you. Every puff, it's like, fuck you. Yeah, I'm living my life. This is what I live. Whatever. Fuck you. Fuck you. And other people associated with.
I know so many of those people. I just a couple of my boys.
Oh, you don't like cigarettes? Pussy. What the fuck happened to this town? There's smoke everywhere.
I know a lot of those guys.
Yeah, the tough guys, right? They can't tell me what to do.
Right.
This thing will kill you. This thing, stop doing this. I don't know why you're buying this. On the package. Right? And then other people smoke to belong. My uncle was smoking, and I wanted to hang out with him. My dad smoked, so I wanted to hang out with him. So we started, let me get one of those. And then now I'm a smoker. All my friends are smokers. It's a communal thing, even if it's just weed. If it's not cigarettes, weed is a communal thing. If you're smoking weed by yourself, that's a whole other conversation, right? But if you're smoking weed because it brings people together. You're relaxed, they're relaxed.
Right.
You talk about your real issues. Same thing with drinking. Same thing with all the things that the behavior is looking for a positive outcome, even though it's not the best behavior.
Right.
The only way to change that behavior is if you put a negative meaning and association to it.
Right.
So if you want your clients to have a certain mentality about training, you need to do what I call a push and pull, where you're associating the training to something positive And it's not torture. Well, he's gonna torture me for an hour. And they joke like that. And he's gonna beat me up for an hour. Whatever association, and transform it. I have a client who lost 70 pounds. Still, till like 3 weeks ago, thought that training was a torture. And then I just started playing with her all the time. Like, how healthy are you gonna be? Oh, you feel healthy right now? You feeling healthy? She's like, oh my God, I'm so healthy. I'm so healthy. And then it was so great to see her like playfully change the association to everything. Didn't complain once. Hasn't complained for the last 3 weeks. And we're gonna keep that dialogue going. Wolf willingly sends me her food now because now she associates instead of like, oh, I gotta text my drill sergeant my food. She sends it to me, no problem, because she associates every time she sends the food with a step closer to where she wants to be. And every time she doesn't do that is a step further away. So instead of twisting, I just twisted that dial a little bit. Like, yeah, you can be rebellious. Be rebellious against killing yourself.
Yeah, man.
Be rebellious against following a doctrine that's hurting you and the community of people that you live with. Like, you can still be a rebel. Like, I'm still a martial artist that wants to give back. I just don't like hierarchies to do it. And I'm not going to disrespect a hierarchy to boost my own shit because I know that that's negativity and nobody needs that, So, personally, the best way to influence yourself is to change. That's a little bit more difficult to change your own associations, but to change someone else's associations to things, you just have to, you have to shift the way they think about things. In order to shift the way someone thinks about things, guys, you have to understand them and listen.
Listeners, cue in. That's going to be a highlight of this podcast. Right there. No, serious. Serious, man.
You got to know how to listen. What are you listening for? You're listening for key things. How does your client describe their reality? It's the same criteria of like, what kind of pain do you have? Is it sharp? Is it dull? Sharp and dull are just one dimension of how to describe things.
Small dimension, though.
Yeah. Like, how do I, like, what the fuck is a dull? How do I even quantify a dull?
Achy.
I don't know. Like, these people don't even live in their bodies half the time. Their brain's on the stick. They're just like going through life. I type, and then I go home, and then I wake up, and then I go to work. I type. It's fucking Thursday. It's time to get drunk. I'll be freestyling all night, y'all.
Where are my cigarettes?
Where are my cigarettes? I don't want to feel my pain.
You're hitting on such a great point. I mean, as with this association is the latest and greatest in pain science.
Disassociation?
Association. And how, my approach, Lee's approach, and many others' approaches that are taking on to neuroscience and pain science, is when someone comes in and talks to me about their quote back pain, there's always a follow-up question on, so what does this mean to you? I'm like, what do you? My back hurts. Fuck,
right.
What do you mean it means to me? I'm like, well, I'm serious. Like, what is this preventing me from doing? It's like, well, I can't pick up my son.
Right.
And I was like, oh, what? Well, what led you to come here? Well, the other day, it's just I tried to pick up my 20-pound son. I couldn't really do it. So, I mean, really, the association of what this back pain means that I'm not going to be able to care for my son. Not that I can't bend forward and twist or have a dull, achy pain. But this is something that is powerful in creating change and perceptual change.
Right.
Perceptual, we could mobilize and you could make someone do a squat and lunge. But without a perceptual shift, I don't think we get anywhere because then the same pattern.
That's right. It'll repeat itself because there's no association to what it really means.
Right.
The meaning of your back aching should mean it's keeping me away from my son. It's keeping me away from my son.
That's a motivating
thing. It's keeping me away from my son?
Yeah, exactly.
That's where you want it to be.
What do I need to do?
What do I got to do?
Right.
I got to do this every day? Done.
Right.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? But if people don't think of it that way because we'll endure pain for as long as we can.
Yes.
We'll endure pain to avoid the real issues. I was working with this guy last week on NLP. I'm doing a lot more just straight neuro-linguistic programming stuff. which is a combination of hypnotherapy and behavioral psychology. Um, and he's a boxing instructor. He's holding pads for 10 hours a day.
Mm.
10 hours a day. And he's looking to do what all trainers who are tired of holding pads doing. Transfer to online, because online I don't gotta hold pads no more. I'm getting out there, right? Like we all want to be like that online guy who just sits back and just collecting my check. It's like, I did all the work, but little do they know,
it is double the work.
It's double the work and an expertise you have no fucking clue how to work.
Yes,
you gotta adopt. And then how do you keep yourself in shape? You got to find balance between learning these new skills, making mistakes, which everybody loves to do, and then moving on and producing something that you're proud of.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, that's rough. So what I did with him is he had some he wanted to work on his perception of himself and that developmental process. He wanted to be more motivated towards those things because he thought that he perceived working on his future business taking away from his current business, which is kind of true in a sense. It kind of is. We're always working on two businesses, right? The business that we're in now and the business we're transitioning into.
Yes.
We're working on two, and you should be. If you're an entrepreneur, that's how it works, right? And we did some mental work. We did some shifting, some behavioral modification. We did some work on what's called logical levels. That's some shit we gotta get into after. Remind me to get back into that, because
logical levels.
Mm-hmm.
Logical levels. Remember that, because that's gonna like change your perception on your reality like real quick. So then we started working on his behavior or his association to working on his new business. And as we began to shift, he had this pain in his back that was purely from stress that he's been living with. Going back to my original point, and we went on a couple tangents, but I brought it back.
Right.
He had this. He didn't tell me about it because he's a tough boxing instructor. But he said, "Man, I had this pain, and as soon as I was able to, feel, I took him through this place where he visualized what the inner resources that he needed to accomplish his goal would look like, right? Just total visualization." And he imagined this sea of infinite energy that he was floating through, where he was weightless. And for me to be able to take him through that process was so powerful for him that the back pain, the muscle spasm that he was feeling in his QL just evaporated, just dissolved. It was purely psychological from where he holds tension subconsciously. And it's phenomenal to see. Like every week I get to do stuff. I get to practice every week with these guys in the master program, and it's really, really dope. But once you change your belief system, which is part of one of the logical levels, the upper logical levels, it's there's not a lot where you can't accomplish. If you change your beliefs about something. So let's get right into logical levels.
Yeah, let's
How about that?
He
You
wrote
ready?
down a little note. Yeah.
Logical
Logical level.
Logical level.
Yeah. All right, so logical levels are what the fabric of our reality are made of. Easy stuff to comprehend. Right? So I know I'm gonna like look back on this and hear this again and realize how I butchered this shit, because I'm getting better and better. And I listened to the last podcast before I came over here, and it's awful. But
we thought it was great. Maybe it was amazing.
I'm my worst critic.
We all are.
Yeah, I'm a little hard on myself, people tell me.
Yeah, we all are.
I'm trying to ease up in the right place. It's a process. So the first level, how we experience our reality, is our environment, right? That's why we relocate to places to reset. It's because we think that's going to change how we feel on the inside, where it's really our narrative, basically, right? So what determines how we feel about our environment, right, is our thought process, the thoughts that we have about it that dictate what we do in our behavior, right? So the behavior is what affects our environment, how we interact with things and people. The feedback we get determines our behavior. So our thoughts influence our behavior, which influence our environment, and that's kind of where people kind of stop.
Right.
I feel like like this making like they're kind of operating from that level. I think this, I'm gonna do this, and it'll affect this, and that's how personal training kind of is too, right? Like I think this, I go to the gym, I do the things, I lift them.
I look like that.
I look like that. Easy. Fucking Steph Curry. Right? Like,
all net.
all net, right? Every time. But then they're like, yo, so, the problem is that my thoughts aren't really leading me to the behavior I want now. Now, what the hell? What's going to... So, okay, in order to observe my thoughts, you got to step back and observe them. To step back into one of these frames, so I have to be able to step into a new one. So what determines my thoughts, right? My belief systems.
Right.
What I believe determines what I think. What I think creates a behavior, and my behavior is how I interact with my environment. Brains on the stick, they're like behavior, environment, behavior, environment, behavior, environment. So it's about going into that place with people to
getting
promote
them to
change.
think, literally getting into their thoughts. Yeah,
Getting into their
thoughts.
belief systems
To
that
get
determine their
their
thoughts.
Got it.
How do you shift someone's beliefs?
It depends on their beliefs.
Well, it
And
depends on their identity. How do you identify? What do you identify with? What determines you? What ingredients do you feel make you up? You're a father. You're a physical therapist. You're a jiu-jitsu practitioner. You're all these things, right? That's what you believe you are. And if anything conflicts with those beliefs, you're not happy.
No.
We're not happy, right? You're engaged. I'm about to be married. If I have a business with my wife, my future wife. I want to build a future life with her. I love her. I'm a dedicated martial artist. If someone's perception of you is not any of those things, we get pissed off.
That's true.
Right? Like, you're not really gonna get engaged to your wife. You're like, fuck you. So it's about how. So now, what about negative belief systems?
Plenty
How
of
do you
them.
know that? How do you know if you're in a negative belief system that you're not thinking thoughts that are empowering? That's how you know you're in you have a limiting belief.
You think you're gonna fail at something
Yep.
Yeah.
immediately.
Creating stories that don't really exist. I mean,
That's a big one, yeah.
Yep. It's creating stories that do no longer suit you. There was a time where I believed I could do everything on my own. I'm a loner. I always everything you see on my Instagram, everything I've ever done, I've done solo because I just didn't trust people to help me, because I felt like no one was interested, or at one point I felt no one really cared enough about me.
right.
And that belief suited me because I worked harder because I felt that I was alone. Now, is that true? Today?
Absolutely not. Yeah.
I got people that care about me, and I know they care about me. They hit me up daily to let me know that they care about me. I see them, and I feel the love. They tell me they love me. They show me they love me. It's not true anymore. So maybe that belief that I had before is no longer necessary, because it's keeping me from really connecting with people. So if you have a belief that sounds like that it kind of suited you before, but it no longer does, it's time to let that go. It's time to let that go and replace it with a new belief that's empowering, that'll allow you to connect to people and to the things, and not the things, but the opportunities that you're looking for. You got to let that shit go, and that's really hard to shift. In order to shift your beliefs, my friend, there's more. Oh, wait. Come on down to
Logical levels.
Logical levels. So in order to observe my beliefs, I have to step back into my true self, into the self, the higher self. What's beyond the things that make me who I am? The jiu-jitsu practitioner, the betrothed, the future betrothed. What's beyond that? These are just ingredients of a pod, but how can I observe these ingredients? It's from what spiritual people call the higher self. The higher self isn't exactly. The higher self isn't some shit that you read in The Secret, or some, in my perspective, it
Right,
could be.
right, right.
It
No,
could
no,
be.
they have ingredients, but no, I got you.
You feel
Yeah,
me? Like, it's
yeah.
not some mystical thing that you can only touch when you're on peyote.
Yeah.
It's an observation standing point. It's the top of the mountain, observing the human experience, which has many different levels, and VKA, visual, audio, kinesthetic, is like the molecular level of how we interpret our reality, and then to work your way up to that of observing yourself and your belief systems, which create your thoughts, that create your behavior, that interact with your environment. That is the ultimate place to be from. So what I do a technique with aligning your logical levels. You start off with the criteria. What do you want to change? Let's say I want to connect with my kid more. You start off like, I just want to hang out with my kids some more. You start to see how maybe my thought process isn't aligning with that behavior, because I don't believe I should be hanging out with my kid as much as I do, because it might interfere with my identity as a person who's like really, independent and is a loner. And observing my higher self, how does that align with what I'm talking about, what I'm doing in my personal life and as who I am? Because I do identify as a father, but maybe not that kind of a father. Once you get back into alignment with what the real purpose of that behavior really is, everything starts to fall back into place, because it is part of your identity, just not that specific self-image. Because we talked about this a little bit, like how we all have multiple self-images. It's not just one Eric, right?
Right.
We have multiple self-images, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
In order to develop one, we have to find out what that purpose is. The beauty about all of those self-images aligning, they align at the higher self perspective, to observe my belief systems and behaviors and my identity. That stuff is observed from that higher place. And in order to really understand what your criteria is, what's important to you in your life, what's important to you in your fitness and your surroundings, you have to observe yourself from that perspective. You don't have to go through that exact process, but at some level, you're going to have to take a look at those things. And as you can hear, that's some heavy fucking lifting.
It is.
That's heavy lifting.
But
It-
go ahead.
I was gonna say, I feel like that process you'll keep having to go back and forth, right?
That's
Like,
right.
And then you might just start like, subtracting things that you don't necessarily need to talk about anymore, and you just keep progressing that way. Every time I hear about this stuff, I always think about the neuro aspect of it,
Oh, same
just
here.
because like brain plasticity, and I mean, maybe they have studies with this with neuro-linguistic programming, but I'm sure there's some brain activity changes
Definitely.
that the further you go into it, you're just like, wow, you're getting away most likely from your emotional part and getting more logical, and then that will change how you feel about perception.
Yeah, and it's almost like you're using Jocko Willink, Navy SEAL, talks about extreme ownership. He talks about detachment, and you're describing it perfect, where you're watching yourself from afar, and it's almost like you're a third party. It's not the third party. It's you.
It's you.
It's you in its rawest form.
Right.
But looking at that detachment is kind of critical, I think, in a lot of high stress situations.
Definitely.
And that's fighters, right? I mean, fighters do it all the time, where that's how they're training, right? I mean, they have.
Yeah, I think so. What do you think?
I think so. I think some of the better people are able to kind of remove themselves from the situation. That's what I see.
During combat?
No.
Okay.
After,
yes.
like a reflective thing,
Correct.
like, I remember when I was in this position and that position.
Right.
But no, during combat, you got to focus in on
You're very
what's
much
in
so in
front.
the moment.
Yeah.
Whoever's in the moment the most usually wins.
That sticks with me all the time.
Yeah.
Yeah, whoever's most present.
Yes. I think that with all that said, it's really interesting how these things aren't really talked about yet in our culture. They will be, I believe, which is why I'm, just staying the course and just doing what I do. And I think that it's really important for us to have an introspective perspective when it comes to our development. It doesn't happen on the outside. It doesn't happen on the outside. Just because you change your behavior doesn't mean you understand why. And the biggest issue I come across the biggest fear that I come across is when someone wants to work with me and they're afraid that the change won't last.
Hmm. That's a big deal.
Yeah, man. They're afraid that they'll put all this money and hard work in, and they can't keep their end of the bargain. And what do you think that would be? If you're thinking about logical levels, what do you think?
That's they obviously haven't changed their perception. They haven't changed their belief system.
That's right.
They haven't changed.
That's
Yeah,
right.
they're going back to.
That's the story that doesn't help them anymore.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. The story that doesn't help, man. And so that's where my work really is at. Is I take them through that journey, in just the various different ways. I get to practice, NLP, which is not really. I describe it to people, and they're kind of like, it's a cult. Like it sounds like it's like
no,
a
it has
cult.
pieces of a lot of things, by the way.
Yeah, it
Yeah.
does.
And not no, it's all labeling. I mean, but
Correct.
behavioral DBT. What is it?
Dialectical behavioral therapy.
Mhm.
So a lot of
Very
that,
powerful stuff.
the paradigm there is thoughts, beliefs, and
Yes,
actions.
yes. I was just observing that the other day.
Yeah.
I have it saved on my phone. Yes.
Yeah, thoughts, behavior, and kind of challenging.
It's like in psychology. I believe,
Yeah,
right?
psychology,
Right.
I would say it's definitely psychology,
Yeah.
and it's basically you challenging your thoughts, right?
Right.
So, oh my God, I'm gonna fail at this business. I'm gonna fail. I'm fear of failure, let's say, of this business,
Sure.
and you kind of assess, do you have evidence for this?
Right.
No. Is
What are
there
the statistics of failing a business?
Yes,
Right.
pretty high.
What is definition of failing a
fucking
business?
high.
Pretty
You
fucking
might want to not look at those.
right. That will
Just take that one down.
Let's
Kinda
focus on something
backfired
else.
there.
But you.
But
you know,
why are they failing? What
Right.
about these businesses make them fail? Oh, okay.
Because-
Then it's not so scary.
Yeah.
Not so
Oh, these
scary.
motherfuckers are cooking the books and not paying their taxes on time. All right, cool. I think we're straight.
They're all credited up.
They're all credited up, and then whatever. Then you can observe their behavior, and emulate that behavior. I'm emulating. Part of my homework is to, I'm modeling.
Nice.
I'm modeling one of my former clients. Probably one of the most influential person I've ever trained, in my opinion.
Right.
And he's one of my favorite humans of all time. My man, Jason Goldman. He was working with Google before Google, as Google was becoming like Google.
Right.
Like,
Wow.
oh yeah, Google. Now it's like, yeah, Google it.
Right.
He was working during that time.
Right.
Wow.
Right? He left. They were like, "You're fucking crazy." He was like, "I need to be challenged. I'm gonna start this. I'm gonna help these guys I know start this company called Twitter." And
Wow.
we'll see what happens. So I was with him during the time that Twitter released like this book about the inner workings of what was going on, and it was going public. So he was like a little stressed out and definitely needed to work out like all the time. So he became fucking shredded. He was a little on the heavy side at one point, and he worked. I think he lost maybe like 45 pounds or something like that. He looked incredible. Then he was like, "All right, well next, I have like infinite resources. What do I do now?" And was traveling the world with this girl, and now then in between that, Obama's second term, Obama called him.
Wow.
And was like, "Yo, we need you to do this like social media thing. We're trying to connect with the country. We want you to be the head of the social media. I forgot what you would call it, but he basically does a lot of cool shit on the internet just to connect the president with
The younger crew.
with everyone, like the White House's Facebook page and like the White House Twitter feed and like connecting Steph Curry with Obama to do a little cool video to show like the human side of him and all these projects that he was the father of. He's a visionary. So, and he's such an intelligent guy and then a cool dude. I love the guy. He was such an amazing influence on me when I was training. I was kind of like in the midpoint of my training now. This must have been like six years ago, I guess. And he just, I can't wait to like hit him up. I haven't actually hit him up yet, so he kind of has to say yes now.
Right. Like, remember me?
Remember me? We talk all the time still.
That's very
I hit him
cool.
up all the time. Instagram. He's always posting pictures of his newborn son and his adorable puppy who looks like like just a wise old man.
A
Dog.
wise puppy.
He always does a pensive look as if like he said, "I'm getting too old for this puppy shit." I enjoy it. I don't know. I enjoy puppies.
That's nice.
Same here.
So yeah, I can't wait for that. He's an excellent person to model. But if you want to look for someone, I think that's a great homework for people listening, is to find someone whose behavior, thought process, and maybe even their belief system and how they identify with their belief system is worth looking into to model.
And in modeling, what exactly would you be modeling on those three systems? I guess behavior, his belief systems, and I'm missing one.
I don't know yet.
Yeah.
I gotta hit him up and ask him some questions. It's very specific questions that I have to go through with him to do my homework. And I'm sure it'll be very insightful because I don't have a lot of mentors that are willing to mentor. That's what they live for.
Right.
You know, my issue was always like I always wanted to mentor before I knew some shit.
Right.
I was first doing martial arts. My first client I was like 13, and I'm like training them in the park, and everything I knew was from like books and fist fights. So I was just trained them with that, and then I was like, yeah, I just believed in myself, and like this is what I wanted to do. People believe in you enough to listen to what you have to say, even if it's not the best information at the time.
Listen,
that's great.
You're still helping. I mean, at the end of the day, you were helping.
True. They did get to their goal. I knew a little more than they did.
Right. That's all it really.
That's all it really is.
Yeah.
Really, if you know a little bit more, you pass that along. And you taught someone something.
That's a very empowering feeling too. I mean, I'm sure at 13, seeing the shift. I mean, that's why you're here now.
That's why I'm here now. Yeah, because of that moment. And then they maintained being a client actually. Like as I progressed, they were a client last year. They still work with me.
It's pretty amazing that they
20 years.
20 years.
That's incredible.
Wow. Yeah.
My oldest client, I think, is about 15, 16, and the things that we did initially and we do now are radically different. But they believe, they believed.
They believed.
And so did I. At the end of the day, you did as well. When it comes to modeling, it's interesting because. Not to go on too much of a tangent, but Tim Ferriss, interviews all these top performers, but he's very specific about his questions about their morning rituals, their routine, and it's very, I'm not saying that you're going to ask those questions, but I would think that those are the behavioral questions, right?
Right.
What are they doing with their time? It's fascinating to me in the last 3 to 4 years to listen. I got on the podcast scene listening to Tim Ferriss, Rogan, Jocko, but they're all in the same realm of.
They're kind of on the human performance mindset coaching, which is like great because you don't have to actually do anything. You can think about doing it, and then you feel productive anyway.
True. The first level was until
I feel productive. I've been listening to this top performer today, and I'm gonna spout this knowledge as if it was my own personal thoughts.
This is so true.
Sound like a genius,
absolutely.
And then eat this shitty sandwich and go take a nap.
Right. This was a few years ago. Spot on. Until no, it's the truth. It was the truth. When I started listening, I would be like, hey, I would pass it on to my clients. I would pass it on to friends.
Yeah,
you gotta listen to this guy. This shit is great.
Oh, okay.
But at the same token, you gotta do.
You gotta do it. You gotta put in the work, and that's what I've been doing myself for the last 3 weeks. Has been putting my money where my mouth is, and I can't expect my clients to withhold from their vices and coping mechanisms if I don't do the same myself.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? So we all have them. We all need improvements, but unless you take time to really look at yourself and all those things and do the digging, you just lip service. It really means nothing. The information means nothing if it's not tested with yourself. Because that's the process of being a good trainer, physical therapist, or anyone that's mentoring someone else. You have to do it yourself and then go through the trial and error of that with yourself.
Right.
And then from that, you understand what your client's experience will be. Once you understand or have a sort of an understanding of what their experience will be, depending on their psychology, of course, then you can then coach them. But you have to experience it for yourself.
Listen to that listeners, listen to that clearly. You have to experience it for yourself.
You have to practice it on your own. I don't give anything to my clients that I don't know what it feels like.
Right.
I saw this on Instagram. Yeah, let's try this. No, that's not gonna work.
No.
Well,
That's
this is a huge topic on. I mean, we always bring it back to physical therapy, but I follow a lot of the people who are leading our industry right now, like on social media, and there's arguments all the time on Twitter, and most of the leaders they believe that, you know, because right now, if you were to really whittle it down to what are the main things that a physical therapist needs to be evidence-based in their treatments.
Right.
So the two major things you should be including in treatments is education and strength training. So if you go backwards for both of those things, you definitely need interviewing skills, which they all agree upon that you need to train in, you need to practice it yourself. And then you go backwards on strength training, you need to go through that yourself.
That's right.
You gotta squat,
That's right.
gotta deadlift, you
And
gotta...
Yeah.
Regardless of the methods, though, right? You have to... The most important tool that a personal trainer or physical therapist will have in his arsenal is communication.
Yes.
If you cannot communicate accurately to your clients, you're not going to get through to them. The plan will not work. There's going to get to the point where you've experienced all the programming and all the tools as far as implementing a strategy for them is under the sun. There's only so many things the body can do. You know, this guy does it a little differently. Or this guy has a Russian name when it doesn't fucking matter if you can't communicate to your clients.
Right.
Sorry to use profanity, delicate personal trainers and physical therapists' ears.
No, it's okay. No, it's all good.
I just really feel I'm really passionate about that.
Yeah.
Which is why I dedicate most of my training after, forever of studying the human body. Just don't get me wrong. I'm not just making shit up out there just like willy-nilly. I have really great mentors in all aspects of my training. They're pivotal people in their, respect, and I highly respect all of them. Rich Bretter, Stu Rosenstein, Nathan Ingram, a lot of people that, Rachel Hott, Stephen Leeds from the NLP world. They've all been doing it for 30, 40 years. And these people laid the foundation, walked across hot coals for me to, be the cool guy in a leather jacket telling you guys what's going on. And it's really about communication. At the end of the day, each one of those people were amazing communicators in their field in that specific criteria.
Yes.
Now, the question is, can you communicate to yourself accurately, clearly, and concisely enough to develop your own criteria? What are you about? And that's how you'll help grow your business.
Very cool.
That's how
goes
you grow.
back. Whatever field you're in. I mean, not field. In any aspect of our life, whether it's a personal situation, whether it's a business situation, maybe even in the street. Right, I mean,
definitely
being able to communicate you're not a threat, or you are a threat. Maybe you
maybe
you have to be a threat. It depends, but it depends on the
kind
of.
Usually the opposite.
Right, it's usually the opposite.
I'm usually the opposite.
It's the same here.
I was in a bar in Brooklyn. I walk in and there's a guy. I'm sitting at the front. I can't hide. I'm like,
right.
I look like this. So I'm sitting in front of the bar. So I'm like, see, my hands are right here. Nothing's happening. You know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
I go to the front of the bar, and there's this guy that just won't leave. He's hammered. And the bouncer was just like, dog, you're not staying here. He was a little older, so he was not about to get in the fisticuffs with this dude, but he would have handled him, So he was getting a little trouble. He didn't want to, he looked like he was tired or something. So I get up, and I just fix my posture, look at the guy. The guy stops.
It's like, oh, shit.
And I'm like, I put my arm around him. I'm like, yo, man, let me talk to you for a second, man. Come on, let's go outside. Talk to me. I can't hear it in there. He goes, oh, okay. And he woefully just walks outside. I'm going to listen. What's going on? This fucking guy. He said this. It's my girlfriend. I said, your girlfriend? He goes, yeah. I said, your girlfriend? He goes, yeah. I said, what about your girlfriend? I don't know. I said, okay. Girlfriend, best friend, everybody comes outside. Like, oh, he's just drunk and whatever. They're all foreign. They all had, like, Spanish from Spain accents. I was like, okay, it's all over. I go back inside. Bouncer was like,
thank you for doing my job.
Gave me the heads up, and I sit down at the bar, and the waitress saw it. He goes, it's on me, honey.
Total New York.
So New York.
That's awesome.
It was great because you get to use NLP to, nullify a potentially difficult situation. Because bouncing, I don't know if you guys ever had to go as well as the New York City bouncer.
I wanted to ask you about that because it sparked. No way. No. I used to chat with the bouncers. My strategy was always to connect with the bouncers because I used to know when shit hits the fan.
That's right.
They don't fucking remember. Shit hits the fan. You don't want them swinging on you.
No.
So it was like, hey, how's this place? What's a cool night? Just one two-liner.
Mm-hmm.
They know my face and that's it. And I'm not a threat to them, and that's all. But your experience with bouncing, I hope did you have any experience with that?
Oh yeah, all the time. All the time.
Right.
Everything can be nullified with conversation, but mostly nonverbal and tonality. When we talked about that, like your girlfriend yelling.
Yes.
Oh, you're yelling? You were yelling.
Yes.
You're like, ah! And she's like, why are you yelling? It doesn't
right.
matter what the content is,
This
usually.
Yes.
I realized myself that my tonality needed a lot of work. My tonality was just, so, all right, so this is what we're going to do. I like saying jokes very monotone and then hoping you pick up on the content and you're listening. But sometimes it doesn't work for everybody's style. Some people need, like something like this, and then it come back down. And then, some people need like fluctuation and what and how they communicate. So you gotta listen to what people want, and then deliver them something familiar, and then you communicate that way. It's just good communication. Good communication is good manners. It's not something that some people have and some people don't. It's really based on your ability to listen and put the other person first just for a little while. You'll come. Don't worry. You'll get what you're looking for. You'll get what you need. But first, have a conversation. Listen to them, and then ask what you need based on their criteria to deliver your message in a way that they can hear you or experience you. And that's what it is. For me, it's about being an active communicator. It's about having good manners. I was thinking about this. I know I'm going from story to story, but this really pertains to. So I say the N-word a lot. Surprise, surprise. And it was like, for me, it was hilarious because I was like, I'm around these like white people that have been told that, listen, this is a very bad word, and you should never say it under any circumstances. And I grew up listening to,
it was just
crazy
like
motherfucker named Ice Cube told me that this is all right. So niggas bleed, like whatever, bro. So it was just how people talk. And I thought, to me, it was like, good. You need to hear this word because this is how people speak that aren't like you, and and this is the only exposure you're gonna get to that.
Right.
Now that works. However, I can't look like this and have people associate that with this because they already think I'm a criminal at work.
Right.
Like I'm like, what do you do? I'm a personal trainer. So what else do you do? And I'm like, this is it. Actually, this is what I'm banking on.
Right.
But it's really to use that language.
Right.
To use that language is bad manners, not because of its taboo nature, but it's bad manners in that context.
Yeah, and the association that's going to come up with it.
The association, their internal representation of what the word means is their reality, not what the word actually means, which means what it means to you.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
What things mean to you don't make a difference to them.
No. And you got to speak a common language.
You got to speak
Somewhat.
There is no common language necessarily,
Right.
but you have to speak a familiar language to them. In order to know that, though, we gotta listen.
Yes.
Mm.
Yes.
Are they using the N-word? No.
Right.
If they did, I'd slap them. But
Yeah,
in
right.
this context, I have some of my really good white friends.
Yeah.
They were saying it all the time.
Oh, that's kind of crazy.
See,
That's
that's
kinda, right.
that's what I mean.
Mm.
In that context, they were just kind of like, they weren't even saying like, "Yo, this nigga was crazy," and he looked at me. It was more like, "Yo, this nigga's crazy." I was like, "You're not even gonna give me the look to see if it's all right?" Okay, that's what we're gonna do. So one day, it took years for me to build the courage up to say this because I love them so much. One day, I was just, guys, that word in this context. I know you guys are cool. I know that it's all about context, right? Because they're not using it in a way that's derogatory or offensive, and that's how language works. However, it also brings up the to me, when my white friends would use that word, it meant that they weren't sensitive to the nature of it and what it would mean for them to use it.
Right.
They immediately understood.
Right.
Okay, cool. Done. Never heard it again.
Right.
Because they love me that much. They're really good friends. But it's really about and then taking that on myself and me using it, which is totally fine by traditional standards of today,
Right.
may not be in 20 years. I don't know.
No, might not be. Who knows?
Might not be. A lot of shit changing. But it's really about me understanding that when it comes to language, because good language and good communication is good manners. And
Takes you very far. People. People make a lot of assumptions based on language. Whether that's whether it's true or not. But I could relate. In the '90s, growing up in the Bronx, the N-word was thrown around. It was just like part of the language.
it was just what it was, man.
And knew a lot of Irish, Italian,
Mhm.
little gangster types that would throw it around too. But it
Right.
was that was what they
wasn't-
were listened to. It was
Right,
there
right.
was nothing meant by it. It was
Someone
like
Puerto
a brother.
Rican
Yeah,
saying the N-word.
yeah.
You don't even bat your eyelashes in New York, specifically
Yeah,
New York.
yeah,
Mhm.
Yeah, that's
something.
it.
Yes, and
Right?
they abbreviate a little.
They'll
they-
abbreviate, right. Yeah.
No, but
Anyone that grew up in the hood, they just said the N-word because that's what they heard. It wasn't, and you never even thought this guy's being racist. I know Chinese people that say that.
yeah, exactly.
I know Puerto Ricans say Dominicans.
Yep.
I know at least 5 other nationalities.
Right. But it's contextual. But again, it doesn't make it
Good manners.
good
in the right
manners.
context.
No,
Right.
no, man, doesn't. And again, what else is associated with that?
Right. You're
it-
from the hood.
yeah.
Your mentality is probably this big.
Right.
There's
your
so many
point
other,
of reference.
Your point of reference is this big. Your
Yeah.
perspective, on your reach and not reach. I think it just has to do with how far do you want your influence to travel? Because other clients will hear me say it, and they'll make their own assumptions because that's the dialogue that's in the gym culture, within the culture.
Right.
Is the value system of what is good language upon the people that you're with. I had a really good, since the last time we spoke, I have many transformative moments, and it's difficult to quantify them. However, one of them was realizing the value system in the ecosystem in which I work in. And that's huge for getting along with people and building rapport.
That's a big one because each gym, each place you go to is its own system.
That's right.
And
How do you survive in it? Where do you in the hierarchy? There's always going to be a hierarchy. You can pretend that there isn't.
there always
But
is.
there always
There's
is.
always a pecking order. Man, it's interesting because each place you go to, it's just different.
That's right. I've been in this place for about 5 months now, and everyone's really cool. But I had to very much so use skills
To maintain.
to build rapport with people, to really get to know them. Because when I first came in, they were not having it. They looked at me once. It was like, you gotta be fucking kidding me.
Who is this guy?
Really?
What? I
Who
don't
the
know.
fuck? I mean,
I mean, maybe it's my own worldview that I'm
dude, if
missing.
I walk into your physical therapy place and I never wore like trainer, I didn't have polo shirts on,
Right.
and I walked in like this, like, yeah, I'm here to do physical therapy or whatever.
You're right.
Yeah.
I'd love
You're
it.
Right?
You're right.
Right?
You're
I walk
right.
into
You're
your
right. Yeah.
ecosystem.
Like,
Anything that's different
doesn't
is
fit.
perceived as a threat.
Correct.
Yes,
100%.
It's perceived
100%.
immediately. They're
Mhm.
not like, oh, let me be friends with this dangerous thing. That eventually, no one ever thinks that. So it's real. They were like, is this guy fucking for real? Is he? And then the next thing is he going to damage the ecosystem? Is he going to threaten my place in the hierarchy?
The image too, right? That
Correct.
their perceived image, right?
The perception of what's happening. Didn't
Right.
talk to me yet. You know, just all they see is like what they see, and whatever their internal representation of that is. Didn't matter. You know, I wrote a post about this a couple of days ago. But it doesn't matter if I brought in money or that I was trying to influence the culture in a positive way by being nice to everyone, getting to know everyone, and that I was a human being, right? I can't, you know, it was more about whatever their internal representation is. And it's very important for you to understand through communication, people are going to reference you and interact with you based on their association to other things. You know, you see a bald guy, you have you have whatever association comes to mind, and then that's how they perceive you. You're not in charge of that,
Right. No.
and you have to understand that that's how people perceive things. That's their map of the world.
Yeah. And sometimes you have a very short amount of time or an interaction in order to gain or lose that person's trust, or
That's right.
you know, and it depends. In some cases, you're like, fuck it, you know, I don't, you know,
Correct.
whatever. And others, it's like, well, you know, I might need to adapt, but to some extent, not to the point where you're compromising your own beliefs. I believe, you know.
I believe. See, that's a tough thing. I think some people do that,
Right.
and then end up resenting themselves and treating other people around them
100%.
poorly because they did compromise. I refuse to.
Same.
This is more than just how I look to me. Otherwise, I wouldn't do it. If it was just how I looked, I would, you know, try to fit in or whatever, you know, spandex, sweatpants, fucking kill me. Fucking kill me right now.
Oh shit!
You see me in sweatpants, you know I'm
You
taking
shoot.
them right off with jiu-jitsu. They're coming right off. Because this is not who I am.
Right.
I'm comfortable like this. You're comfortable wearing sweatpants and a baggy hoodie and, you know, that's what you do, bro. I'm not here to, like, okay, I will make fun of you, but I will not. Dude, that's not my internal representation of what a trainer looks like. You know what I'm saying? Like, I think I should be comfortable doing whatever it is that I'm doing as long as it makes it contributes in a positive way. If the way I look is so distracting to you, that maybe you're not working so hard.
I was gonna say, if they're really focused on your appearance, I mean, there's other things should be going on.
Yeah,
and especially if it's an independent spot.
It is. It just you know, it just, I guess the way I look is so jarring to people sometimes. I don't know. I guess they can't. No one. People usually can't pinpoint what I'm about because there's a lot of conflicting information here to them. To me, it all fits together. It's me, but to them, they look at me and I can see them processing,
trying to figure it out,
and then I can see them going to their internal reference in their mind, trying to visualize what it is that it reminds them of, and then make the picture. Because part of the training for communication is knowing where people access things in their brain, right? What their eye movement is, coupled with, obviously, their body language and tonality. But when I'm speaking to someone and I can see them, like, you know, having this internal dialogue.
We all do.
You know, we all do. And it helps me build rapport with them because I understand what they're coming from a little bit better. So I can kind of guide them to show them that I'm a human being just like they are, experiencing the same thing, knowing what I look like. Because, you know, it's difficult for them too. I feel like a lot of people go through, their internal dialogue varies, but the most common one that I feel like I run into is one from insecurity and unsure of themselves You know, they're in like clothes that don't fit right. If they're a client, you know, they're trying to get in shape. They're battling their own. They're battling their own beliefs about themselves, and then here comes a distraction from that.
Mm.
I get it, you know, but I'm really here to enhance your experience and to let you know that you can be yourself. You can be yourself and express yourself and be respected for who you are and accepted for who you are. But you're gonna have to do that within yourself first.
Powerful, very powerful. It's a tough conversation to have.
It's
with
tough,
one
man.
now,
Because obviously, if what you are isn't respected by your peers,
Right.
then you're gonna have a tough time.
Yep.
Not everyone's communication skills are trained, you know.
No.
So I understand it's difficult to be yourself in any microcosm. It's hard, you know. That's why people, you know, find their clique and they find their tribe, or they find their group. But to really stand alone on your own, to represent oneself, to be in line, you know, that's tough. That's tough. But it's not going to be tough for long because eventually people will connect with you.
Right. Well, they see it. They not only see it, they feel it. You
Yes.
know, when they're in your presence,
Right.
you know, they know that something a little different here.
Right.
Or just you connect.
You connect because it's not so different after all.
Right. It really isn't.
It's
That's
not. We're just in the same experience.
The blessing of living here in New York, you
Mhm.
realize, like, you just learn not to make assumptions because they're usually wrong. You know, and growing here up in New York, you know, some of the craziest individuals you might meet, probably the most insecure, right?
Definitely. Definitely.
And some of the
that
most
are from here,
or they're from here, like
yeah.
well,
Yeah. Depends. It depends on the. I think it
Depends.
depends on the atmosphere, the
context,
environment,
right.
and the context. Context is everything.
But the difference is, you know, I always say nothing really surprises me. You know, at times you see something in the street, you know, it's a person doing something wild, and well, it's New York.
Mm.
But you know, we do live in a bubble of somewhat of tolerance and acceptance of one another here in New York. That, you know, hopefully spreads to the world. It doesn't look like that recently, but
I mean, it depends on what lens you're looking through, right?
Correct. I mean, my world, it is inclusive. So I mean, I don't know. Yeah, I don't know what others are doing, but I feel that here in New York we are a bit spoiled in a good way. I'm not complaining.
Right. I feel like it's what we do with it, though. We can be in occupy the same space, but if we're not optimizing our experience with one another by learning about each other, then it's a waste of time to be in New York if you're not experiencing things that bring you out of your comfort zone and what I call enhancing your map.
Yes.
Right.
This is something we chat about a lot, about getting uncomfortable on a regular basis.
Yeah.
You know, obviously jiu-jitsu, we go back to that, is
Right.
part of that, but it's not just about jiu-jitsu. It's taking a road you might not want to go to and trying a different activity.
That's right.
Checking out a neighborhood. My wife and I she calls it cultural Sundays. But we basically just drive around to a different neighborhood.
Right.
And whether it's a museum for my son, but just checking out our city. I mean, going to Battery Park and looking at the carousel. There's so many things here in New York to check out.
So many things.
It only takes a few hours, and it doesn't have to cost money.
No,
you know,
no, it
but
doesn't.
just taking it in and just
City changes all the time too.
as we speak. You know, something's closing, something's opening. A different ethnic group is moving into a neighborhood, moving out of a neighborhood.
Right.
It's really cool, and I enjoy these cultural Sundays. It adds. But it's uncomfortable. Initially, I was resistant. I was like, I just want to chill. I just want to relax.
Yeah.
I have a busy week.
Mm-hmm.
And she was like, well, it's not about you. It's about this little guy. And I was, you know, and then everything changes. But, getting uncomfortable is a really critical. And getting uncomfortable in a way that it makes us grow.
Yes, it does. I think that there's something to being in tune with your suffering inside and out.
Right.
Suffering is such a harsh word to describe what the human experience is, but it is suffering. We're constantly being uncomfortable. We're constantly being pulled in different directions and our attention being pulled in different ways. But that's a part of the experience. The experience of being a human is to suffer. But to listen to what your suffering is telling you is a skill that most people kind of ignore now.
All right.
Because we're not spending time with ourselves. We're not spending time with our thoughts and really evaluating what our criteria for happiness is.
Right.
How do you know what's making you happy if you're not sitting down with yourself and checking in to see what's going on? Maybe the thought process and belief systems you had are no longer serving you, and you let that program in your mind run along too long, like I did, and it's time for an upgrade. The cultural Sundays is a great way for your wife and your son and you to upgrade your map of the world.
Absolutely.
And just kind of like, okay, well, maybe my perception of this thing wasn't totally correct. 'Cause maybe I didn't have all the information.
Right.
You know, that's the benefit of coming to New York. People move here and then realize how different it is, and then get scared and immediately find a group. They immediately find a group to latch on to, whether it's Henzo Gracie or, you know, fucking
CrossFit
or
Soul Cycle.
Soul Cycle, whatever. Yeah.
No, serious. I mean,
yeah,
it gets
it's a
very
real group.
clicking.
They're a real group. I mean, you know, they may have a marketing team and things like that, but they're a group of people that live and die by the ideologies that they present. And just because they're owned by Equinox doesn't mean that it doesn't bring people together. You know, it may not be, you may not like the way it happens, but it's happening. So I think to be in tune, the thing is about those group fitness classes and such is that it takes you away from your suffering, your internal suffering. Because after that, like I talked about, I think the last time, after that class is done, that dialogue goes back on again. You know, and that's why people can't sleep at night, because they haven't addressed all these things, and then it's like, oh, what about this? Like, my mind does this, so I'll take a pill for that. I'll go to sleep. I don't have to listen to that dialogue so much, and then the issues still remain, but at least I don't have to listen to it. Just because you turn down the volume for a little while doesn't mean that they go away. And that's where uncomfortableness really comes from. It really comes from that dialogue you haven't been listening to as to why you value these things. Why do you want to change these things? Not necessarily I think the why. And then you can lead to what, you know. Define your criteria, and then you can define what makes that criteria and what the meaning is. When we're talking about association and how we have these, you know, the meaning behind the action. If I tapped you on the shoulder, what does that mean to you? How do we define our meaning for what's happening and what in our experience? That's way more important, because that's how we remember things. You know, that same client I was talking to today, she really didn't want to get measured, right? She really didn't want to get measured and shit. I never brought it up, but she was like adamant about that. But I was like, so what exactly about? I asked her, what exactly about the measuring did not like? And she was like, well, I just don't like it. It's just not a fun experience for me. I said, that's interesting, because you did mention that you wanted to get things a little looser on, you know, your clothing and stuff like that. And he said, well, I think if we focus on this, that'll just happen, which of course is not how that works. But you have to understand her mapping, like how her framework is.
If she's uncomfortable, then let it go.
You have to be, especially since I didn't even bring it up. It's a weird situation where you have to address it, but you can't be direct about it.
Right.
So I thought, well, okay, how can, you know, you being lighter, not getting measured, affect your performance? Because this key focus on the performance here. She immediately was turned off by that notion as well. So the meaning of her getting measured to her is negative, because she believes it won't go down.
Right.
Regardless of what her output is, regardless of her changing her behavior, her belief is the weight will not go down. And that's the distinction she had. She was too afraid to get into, because it was so painful for her that she knew that she didn't have the ability at the time to deal with her coping mechanisms, to feel empowered, to act and change her behavior and her thought process enough about her behavior to actually get what she's looking for in that way. So it's about listening to people's criteria that way, and then changing how they associate to those things.
How would you say, you know, what we've been discussing with changing one's framework or belief system, how would you know if a client is even ready? Like, for instance, they're going to be, I'm sure there are individuals that may not even be ready to get this this deep or real. You know, the truth is a lot of people want to scratch on the surface and stuff.
They want to change it right to behavior.
Right to behavior. So do you have a criteria in terms of when you know, all right, this person is ready? I mean.
Yes, I do. I learned it from raising my daughter. If you're old enough to ask, you're old enough to find out.
There you go.
That's what
That's a cool one. Yeah.
That's what I like. That's what was served me well. Daddy, where does babies come from? Well, have a seat. We're gonna figure it out. This is gonna be, and then make it. And how you deliver it has to be according to that criteria. I'm not gonna tell like, well, mommy and daddy, you know, had a couple of beers. That's not how I'm gonna describe that to my daughter.
Right.
I'm gonna be like, well, remember when we talked about cells?
Yeah, there you go.
Remember we talked about cells? Well, the cells from mommy, right, and the cells from daddy combined together. And they made you. Isn't that crazy? That's amazing.
Yeah.
Like, wow. Like, but how? Well, see, we have these, you know, these organs here that store chemicals, and then your mom has chemicals as well, and those chemicals are called this, and these chemicals are called that, and they mix together, and over a period of time, life forms, and so there's nothing sexual about what I said.
No. You got. I wish I could record this for some of my
is
parents.
Recording.
Yeah, no. Well, I'm gonna send this to my parents. Some of my parents, because some of my patients have teenage or adolescent, 12-year-old, 13.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh my God, my son just said he wants to have the conversation, and I was like, what do you mean? She's like, and then the 9-year-old son, so like, Mom, he wants to talk about puberty, but I could tell him about it. You know, so the 12-year-old's like, this is inappropriate.
Right.
You don't know what you're talking about. Mom, we should have the talk in about 2 weeks.
Okay.
And the mother was like, well, what do you know? She was like, well, I know enough, but I'm not ready to have this conversation. In 2 weeks, we'll have this. So anyway, hearing these kids, and I'm like, holy shit. I'm looking at my son. I'm like, how is this going to go down? I mean, it's going to, whatever.
Dude,
it's going to be easy. Yeah.
YouTube is going to download to his brain. It's gonna show up in his eye. You know?
It's going to show him, this is how you were created.
This is how you were created, yeah. And it's going to be so, you know, whatever. But I think the way that we describe it to our kids is based on that, and our clients, how we know that they're ready for a change.
Right.
Is whether or not they're asking for one.
There you go.
When they ask you for a change, like, you know what, man, like, I'm losing all this weight, but I'm not really happy with this. You ask them again. Ask them, you know, what about this do you dislike? Because when you get specific about that, you take the generalization. Like my client earlier today that I'm describing, it's very general. I can't do anything with this information.
Right.
I don't like it. All right, what do you dislike about this? I don't know, but I don't like it. It's like, what about this don't you like? Questions.
Right.
You know, so they're like, okay, you don't like questions? No, I like questions. I just don't like these questions. What about these questions? That you just kind of lead them.
Right, lead them to the way.
Lead them to where, you know, you can get more information about what they don't like. But you got to do it in a way that's smooth.
Yes.
You just got to be like, you know, just have the best interest at heart. You got to really listen. So I'm just trying to navigate them to where they want to be. They may not get there the way they think that they're going to get there. Hard work, like the Biggest Loser. Just kind of like stick them on a treadmill until they die, and then give them a 1,200, 1,300 calorie diet, and hope for the, you know, just kind of like torture them on TV and make them cry. And the blood sugar's low, and you know they're all, you know, erratic, and their brain's not working great. But anyway, yeah, that's great TV though.
Right, it is.
That's just not how you really change people's behavior. You change people's behavior by aligning yourself. And aligning yourself with them and understanding where they're coming from. That's the only way that you're going to really make a profound impact on anyone's life, is if you listen and you speak to them in a way that's respectful, and especially respectful to the map of the world and how they view their reality, because that's the only reality at that point, in this specific criteria, in this context, that matters.
Correct. Very well said. Communicated crystal clear, as I said on the last podcast. I mean, not pretty powerful, very powerful stuff.
Thank you. I hope I was able to add on to the stuff that we
Oh,
talked
I think
about.
I think we got to label this one communication.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what we're gonna label. Let's sleep on the labels.
sleep on
Forget
it.
about
It'll
the
come to you.
labels. But anything you might want to add. We're gonna wrap up in a little while, but I
Yeah.
want to know. I was asking when people are ready for change, but is there any kind of parting? I mean,
Parting words.
to the audience here, in terms of.
Please bring me hot chocolate from Italy.
There you go.
2 shots of espresso.
Oh, that's a good little mocha, and they do it really well.
Oh,
I mean,
it's like a melted chocolate bar.
yeah, man, that is real.
Only 12,000 calories, but you know.
It's all right. I think you
We all
probably
have our
burned them
vices.
out a couple hours ago. I'm sure.
Yeah, I'm trying. I might have to go back to the gym to be honest with you. I might have to go back and do some more work. But some parting words would, I guess, remain flexible on your approach, on your road, no matter what destination you have in front of you. Whatever your destination is, you want to remain flexible towards wherever you're going, because you might be saying no to some things that might be an improvement on what you actually want. Sometimes we say no to things because they're not the exact thing that we want, or the exact way that we thought we were going to get it. And I think that's really powerful, is to be able to see the value in something that might be worth more than what you're asking for. So just to be, in order to be in that place, I think you need to be more grateful for what you have and for your experiences. All of your experiences that you've ever had were there to teach you something. Every rocky place that I've ever been to, and it's not to say I'm not this like guru that never has a bad day and shit. It's like you constantly work on what you need to work on for yourself, so that you can be the best version of yourself for the people that need you the most. That's as simple. For me, that's what really motivates me to bring it every session. I don't do packages right now for that moment, for that reason, because I want to be in the moment and I want to be present with my clients every session. I want to earn it every single time, because I expect them to earn it every single time. And I'm looking forward to seeing what the future of my industry goes. I know I'm going in a particular direction that's a little different, and I have much love and respect for everyone that dedicates themselves to fitness and physical therapy, and really puts the time in to listen to podcasts like this one to advance their skills, because they care about their skill set, they care about their clientele, and they care about building their business. It's not because of the cash, because ain't nobody in this business for the super quick millions of dollars that you're gonna get from being a personal trainer. You're in it because you want to make an impact in some way. And if you want to make an impact, just listen. And the quality of your message will be determined by how well it's received. And the only way to understand how well it was received is if you listen.
Well said.
That's awesome.
Thank you so much for being on this podcast.
Man, thank you.
Inspiring talks, informative, and straight from the heart.
Thanks,
Thank
man.
you. I
Thank
really
you.
appreciate it.
I really appreciate you guys having me on.
Yeah,
Thank
man.
you so much
Well,
for
thank
listening
you.
to me rabble for like 90
No,
minutes.
It was
no,
great.
no. Part 3, listen up, sometime in fall.
Oh, all right. Let's do it.
We're doing a trilogy here.
Oh.
That's right.
Well, signing off.
All right. Thank you for listening.
All right, guys. Peace.
Thanks.
No engineer.
No engineer, so
We're gonna keep going on YouTube.
We're just going to keep going.
Yo,
He said he was gonna come back when.
you can go back when he finishes lunch.
No, you don't turn it off. He'll turn it off, I think. He said he'll stop it.
Supposedly. That was great, dude.
Yeah, man. Thank you.
I really appreciate it,
Having me
bro.
on board.
Thank you. Good stuff, man.
Thanks, man. No doubt.
Powerful.
Do you have your third stripe yet?
No.
No. I was gonna say I want to see you in the Danaher class.
He needs a purple belt, man.
Get the fuck out of here with that shit. I mean, I don't know, man.
You just go back to the hierarchy. You said it.
Exactly.
It means
It means nothing. I mean, I was with Elijah today. Elijah just competed. I was like,